Good morning, good morning, good morning. Or good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it may be for you. Welcome back to Get Your Roll On. Oh man, well, we love that. Let's see if we can go ahead and fix. There we go. Sorry, I saw that even though I updated it, OBS did not actually update my category, my tags, my any of those things, even after I told it to update. So I had to go tell it to do that again. So apologies for the brief pause. I'm going to grab a link for our stream, drop that off over in the Foundry server, and then we will get started. So, hope everybody is doing all right today. We are going to, I think, actually, I don't know. Part of it will depend on how detailed I get with things, which, if you've been here for any of the rest of the stream, may be far more than is necessary. But I do feel like today is probably the day where we are likely to finish this scene outside of everything, but actually putting down enemies and building the encounter itself, which that piece is going to wait for a future stream. I am, for these, just going to move on to building more scenes. Reason being is there are some back-end pieces of some items and some abilities and things of that nature that I need to build in Foundry, that I don't know would necessarily be something that anybody would be interested in, because it would literally be me going into the back end and like setting up the back end macros and things like that on like items and abilities and that sort of stuff. And if that is something that interests people, then by all means, let me know. I'm more than happy to do that on stream. I just don't know whether that is, in fact, the thing that people want to check out. And I kind of feel like the scene building piece of this is really kind of the bigger goal of mine with these streams. And so, you know, if you want to get into some of that nitty gritty, like I said, just let me know. But without further ado, we will keep working on our scene here. And as per usual, when it comes to some of these guys, I can see where we've got some gaps here. So we'll just go ahead and correct those. One of those should be right there. Yep. And sometimes you just gotta zoom in pretty close. Right, we got you, and then there was another one here. And part of why, a lot of times there won't be as much issue with all these like little gaps and things like that. Part of why there's so many on this one in particular, kind of like this right here. What's going on with that? Let's fix that. Okay, which one of these is it on? Let's go back to the light. Okay, it's that scene. Part of it too is the size of this particular scene. Because, you know, keep in mind, like I said, the whole point of this scene is to kind of, because one of the, like, the major tenets of the campaign world that I'm going to be running this, and tenets maybe is the wrong term. Facets is probably more the word that I'm looking for. Is that everything is sort of I mean, I don't want to say just incredibly old, right? You know, but the current civilization is built off the back of the previous civilization, which was built off the back of the previous civilization, which was built off the back of the previous major civilization. And so you have this kind of layered history to things, and specifically, like, you know, I want to, with scenes, establish, you know, like with this entire location would have originally been built by the dragons, right? Of this campaign setting. Now long extinct. Well, not long extinct, but now extinct, supposedly. Maybe not. You know how all of that goes. A lot of that will also kind of depend on how the campaign goes. Which I know I'm talking about a lot of this for talking about a lot of this for the sake of, you know, the whole point of this campaign when I run it is it's going to be a playtest for my FPS 5e supplement that I intend to release. Not intend to, that I will be releasing later this year. And so a lot of it may seem like maybe it's a lot of detail to put into something like that, but it is still a campaign that I'm running in Evendel, which is a campaign world that I have had for a very long time. And it's funny because not wholly dissimilar to something like Larian with Divinity, it's kind of gone through a few different iterations as I've gotten it closer and closer to what I actually want it to be like. And so because of that, you know, each time I'm able to like iterate a little more and more clearly kind of define things. But yeah, I don't 100% know where I was going with that. However, the whole point of, like I said, this is I want it to feel huge, right? Like this is the size of a normal player token. And I want them to feel like this was built by people significantly greater, larger, that sort of stuff than themselves. And so part of why some of these seams are so hard to line up is because they line up based on pixels. And there just are significantly more pixels on this because I have this as, I think, like a 300 pixel per like square ratio or something like that in your scene, just so people can see what I'm talking about. The grid size, so I have gridless. Oh no, I guess I just have it at 100. Crazy, I thought I had it much bigger than that. Oh, that's right, I'm using a 300 DPI version of this map because of the sizing. Right, okay. I was like, how did I do this? Because there's a few ways you can do it. Right, so you can just come in here and you can adjust your grid size, and you can make your grid size smaller, right, which will then make all of your tokens and things like that smaller, which will then in turn make your map feel larger. But with this, I specifically went with a 300 DPI map for the actual like background of this scene. So that a 100 pixel token, right, or 100 DPI token would feel very small in comparison. That's how I did that on this one. Depending on what assets you have and how you're building your scene would depend on how you approach that. I just, because I use get all of my maps from Seafoot Games, they produce pretty much all of their maps in 75, 150, and 300 DPI versions. I will almost always, because I want as high detail as possible, I will almost always use 300 DPI, and then normally what I would do, I'm not going to do it because it will jack with all my wall spacing and everything like that, and I don't want to mess with that here. But normally I will use, if I'm able to, a 300 DPI map. And then what I will do from there is I will go in under the scene configuration, and under the scene configuration, I will adjust the grid size to represent the size that I actually want the tokens to be on there, because I want all of the scenes and the maps to have as much detail as possible. So using the higher DPI just gives it a little more detail. It is so minimal, like the difference between the 300 and 150 DPI versions of these maps. But I just like to approach it in that way, to use the 300 DPI and then scale my tokens with the grid to represent that. Because even though I run my scenes gridless, right, as you can see here on the grid setting, this will automatically determine what the sizing of your 1x1 token is. There you go. All right, but without further ado, the main thing that we're here to work on today is fleshing out the top portion of this tower. So one of the species, right, that exists in this world, that is part of, so I've given kind of a high level overview, right, of this world was originally like kind of built and inhabited by dragons. The dragons were hunted down to extinction, in large part by the giants, or so they would have you believe. Just throw that out there. You know, it's I try to put a fair amount of like, well, here's the story as this entity tells it in my campaign, and allow for other entities to have different versions of that same story. And, you know, because that is reality. That is like what actually happens pretty much every day. Is there are, you know, events that people have their takes on, not takes, but people have their perceptions of, right? And then you have the official story that's given, and then you have that might be different than, you know, an eyewitness account and all of those sorts of things. So I try to actively build those subtle differentiations in, and then let my players decide, you know, what course of action they want to take, or which one of those like thought processes, or which one of those stories that they align with, right? So in any case, the giants are responsible for the death of the dragons, and they are now leading an army to attempt to unite. I'm air quoting. You can't see it, but hopefully the inflection of my voice conveys it. Unite the peoples of the world, right? But I guess I'll give a little more, because this is going to help maybe make what I'm about to do with this like Watchtower area make more sense. I'll give it a little bit of exposition on the giants, in that their kingdom, their empire, right, is known as the Iron Compact. The Iron Compact was originally just the nation of Javok, a nation of giants and humans and elves, or Oliva. We don't need to get into why I specified that name here in a moment. But giants, elves, dwarves, gnomes, humans, right? All living in harmony in this one portion of the world, kind of, you know, having an interdependent ecosystem and things of that nature. Well, long story short, the giants eventually make some moves that allow them to essentially claim dominion over the whole of this nation. And they become, like, in name, all of these species are still equal under what is known as the Iron Compact, which was essentially a military organization or compact formed to destroy the dragons. And since accomplishing that goal, if in fact they are the ones responsible for accomplishing said goal, the Iron Compact was not disbanded, even though their goal had been accomplished, right? They are now the ruling entity over Javak. Well, it's still made up of more than just giants, even though giants are societally clearly the upper caste, and even within giants, there are numerous different castes, right? All the way up to like true giants, which are the actual true like nobility and things like that of this nation, down through to, you know, your Goliaths, or essentially your Goliaths being the least of the giant kin, right? And your ogres and trolls, and that all having places in this society based on being giants. And then you have the humans and the elves, who are both still, air quotes, active parts of this nation and this alliance. And so in that situation, one of the elves, the Haxalva, are essentially the dwarves and gnomes. We won't go into all of the details, but have essentially become prisoner species of the Iron Compact and are largely utilized as slave labor. And the Haxalva are largely the ones that see over that. Well, beyond that, though, the Haxalva also have a talent for, let's say, having native flora and fauna in the different regions they operate come to heal and be utilized for their purposes. So they are naturally adept at training beasts, things of that nature. A talent that's been picked up through generations because they have needed more than just their own numbers to be able to police, right? The gnomes and the dwarves, who are effectively largely kept in things like labor camps or kept around for forced labor and that sort of stuff. No, it's not pretty. It's not intended to be. I am not condoning forced labor or slavery or anything like that, but they are things that I feel like not should exist, right? But it makes sense, I feel like, in the internal composition of this world for these horrible, horrible things to exist. And it also is intended to reinforce how despicable and awful and how sort of evil empire the Iron Compact is. Hello, Neko. I am glad that you are here. I hope that you are doing well today. But in any case, I went through all of that exposition to say that this guard post is going to be sort of the Haxalva, because they also tend to be, they hold a very strange place in the Iron Compact society in that they're essentially the only species, or even in this case, subspecies, because you have more than one type of elf, right? That are actually given the time of day, that are actually given any, like, notoriety, that are given any societal standing within the Iron Compact. Everyone else, is there any societal standing or title or anything like that that they have is essentially that in name only. But that's largely because the Haxalva operate sort of as the keepers and sort of secret police of the Iron Compact in a lot of ways. But they tend to be looked down upon for completely different reasons, or shunned for completely different reasons by both the other elves and humans, right? That are, currently not prisoners, air quotes, in that they're just not being forced to live in a forced labor situation. Hey, thank you for the follow, Ilya. I appreciate you, brother. I hope that you are doing well today. I am happy that you are here. But yeah, and then you also have the giants who look down on them because they're not giants, right? And so it's kind of the situation where they're disdained for their elevated position by other humans and elves, and they're disdained by the giants for having an elevated position and not being giants by the giants. So they tend to be very insular, right? And very much keep to themselves. Most of their units that operate within the military, very rarely are they in sort of mixed units, right? Whereas you will find giantkin and other humans and elves all sort of mixed together in different units, something that will be represented down here with this sort of ranger reconnaissance unit, right? That's that we know is camped out here at the moment, or at the time of the party's arrival, to try to liberate this fortification. I don't know whether that's the appropriate term, but to take out the Iron Compact that are here, most certainly. But this is going to be where the Haxalva have sort of set up their camp, and also made the decision that we're going to decide on some aerial, or probably birds of some type, avian, right? Species that is native to the Red Wastes, which is the giant desert that this whole campaign is going to be taking place in, that they have managed to subjugate some of, or managed to capture and, I guess, break some of. I don't want to say domesticate, because it's, they're about as domesticated as a wolf that has been able to be brought to heel by someone through, force and coercion. But some avian creatures, more than likely birds. I don't feel like this desert is going to be a dinosaur-y place. I actually kind of already have established in the world where remaining dinosaurs or dinosaur-like creatures still exist, and it isn't here. It's a very jungle-like place. It's a whole other thing. I don't need to get into that. I'm going way down rabbit holes with this campaign world. I have run most of my D&D games in this campaign world specifically for quite some time. Outside of Elia, actually, which I apologize. I shouldn't be calling out people that aren't talking in chat. But actually was part of a campaign where, if I have the time, and I thought I had the time at the time, which is why I did this, one of the things that I really like to do when I'm doing a new campaign with new people that don't have some sort of specific intended goal, right? This campaign has a specific intended goal to play test certain mechanics that are going to go into a supplement that I'm going to publish, and therefore I need to have a little more control, right, over the campaign setting and that sort of stuff, because I just need that piece to be sort of easy enough to set up with the flow that I can focus on the play testing, the mechanics piece of it. But I also, just having people sit around a table and run combat scenario testing is not necessarily fun. So that's why I wanted to put it in campaign form. And so that's why I'm gone back to Evendel, which is a homebrew setting of my creation that I've been running campaigns in for years now. That is is specifically a D&D setting. Like, it's essentially meant to take all of the things from Dungeons and Dragons and give it a purpose for why it exists in this campaign world specifically, as opposed to the kind of kitchen sink-esque feel that I feel like you get with Forgotten Realms, because it's like, here's what it started with. It started with elves and dwarves and humans and monsters, done, right? You know, and then slowly all these other things have been added to it over time, cultures and things of that nature. And so it's just kind of gotten this kitchen sink feeling, because every time something gets added to it, they just kind of have to then decide or create or fabricate the reasons of why it fits into the setting, as opposed to this is kind of, while it's getting a little bit of a facelift from a technology level standpoint, one that I've kind of always wanted to give it, but I just never really felt like I had the mechanics to be able to do that, so I wrote them myself. Which, you know, if the game doesn't give you what you're looking for, make it. All right. Tons of exposition. Everyone probably knows way more about this campaign setting at this point than they ever wanted or needed to. However, now that you know, we are going to be setting up the top of this tower as our sort of Haxalva outpost, right? So there are going to be a couple of tents up here, and there will also be some nests of the avian creatures that they have brought to heal as their sort of makeshift aerial support and scouts. And so you heard me talk about, during the course of creating this map, flying a number of times. Well, this is part of why, because I knew the world that I was running in, and the Haxalva are known to bring aerial creatures to heal, to act as mounts for like aerial scouts and snipers. So yeah, with that, we will go into our tile controls. I thought I was building a scene in Foundry. Instead, I just ended up talking about my campaign setting for half an hour. Thank you guys for hanging in. And we'll go into assets. And then I'm just going to do like... I'm going to call this animal assets as just a base folder. And we're going to see if we can find some kind of like nest in these assets that I've got to build with. And I'm pretty sure that I have one. We have webs, spider webs and cobwebs. It's like, I know I've run across this somewhere in all of this. I'm just trying to remember what it classified it as. What is it? Maybe it was under... Sometimes it puts things in weird places. Or like gives them strange... Okay. Well, this is something that I do... This isn't what I was looking for, but this can kind of... Well, this is something I want here. So I will go ahead and grab this and grab that. Because the Beastmasters are going to have their like beds next to the nests. I may just have to use like a hay pile to kind of represent, because I have they have a thing in here called natural decor. And one of them is twigs. And it's like, I'm looking at this and go, well, I could build a nest out of a million twig, like, assets. I am not going to do that to myself. Okay. Well, let's think for a second. Terrain. Burial. It's like I know that there's one of these that has like eggs in it too. And now I'm like, but where? Restraints and torture. Not under that section. Is it under clutter? Spell components are nice. So weird. Okay. Well, we will just use, they have some hay piles that will serve our purposes, and could act as a, you know, a makeshift nest. Excuse me, I had to sneeze, and I figured most of you didn't want that in your ears, so I had to mute for a moment. All right. Size-wise, well, first, let's put this at, we're going to put you at 91 feet, because that should, whoop. All right, I now can't move it because I now need to be here, because I've moved it high enough that it technically qualifies as an overhead tile at this point. So yeah, we'll use this hay pile or a couple of these, because they would make sure that like the outer portion of this tower, the place where their snipers would need to potentially take shots at people, they would make sure that that was prepared to utilize for its intended purpose. So, and then go ahead and put another one of these out. And kind of layer a few of these together to create our little, like, sort of nest area, right? Okay. Yeah, I feel like that looks pretty good. And then we'll have, whoa, that's now in the building below. So to get to you, I'm going to have to do some wonky things. Okay, there we go. Let's do that. And then, so tile controls, and then we'll turn this off. And then now I should be able to, nope, not create tile. Let's grab a tile that's right here, maybe. Oh, please don't tell me I'm just going to be stuck here with that thing. Oh, I was on the overhead tile. So it's there and it's in the overhead tile layer. Yeah, foreground layer. Okay, this is our invisible tile, which is going to let me grab that. All right. And then I can just put this back because this is just here to establish people not being able to see through the floor. Okay, cool. So that fixes that for the moment, and then we will remember to utilize this as our staging area for things. Okay. So height-wise, I think we want it a little bigger than the beds down there just because of the bounds of this. We're going to try that to start. Yeah, no, don't stick things underneath there. I think I did something weird with the dimensions on that. Let's try this one more time. Yeah, okay. So, if this is 150, then that means I want this one to be not 300, 200. All right, I feel like this is going to be too... Oh, come on. Come on. Oh, this is where tiles can sometimes start to get a little frustrating, but that's all right. Just move that guy out of the way. And then we fix this. There we go. Okay. Too small. So let's try 200 by 300. That looks appropriate for like a normal size person. Actually, it looks maybe a little too large. Oh, why am I like this? All right. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to come off of this. I'm going to do this. We're going to go invisible for a minute. And then I'm going to put one of these guys down and I'm going to compare it to this because this is meant to be a bed for an ogre-sized person. So let's see what that looks like comparatively. And that will let me know if it's... Yeah, okay. So this is much smaller. So 200 by 300 is... Okay. That's... And also it doesn't have the bounds of just like a normal bed. So, and now I want to go back to my foreground layer. Select this guy. 91 feet. Elevation. And bam. Okay. And then, yep. We're gonna have... Trying to kind of make it look natural or like someplace that somebody would set something like that up. Right, so we'll do the same thing with this guy, and then we'll go 200, 300, 91 feet, and we'll rotate this guy into place. For sure, I like that. And I almost like that it looks a little haphazard, because of the way the like Hoxalva sort of exist outside of a lot of the traditional, channels of command and things of that nature. And they oftentimes sort of almost operate on their own in a lot of instances, just alongside the rest of the Iron Compact. I imagine that, like, they're a little more... they wouldn't necessarily have some of the, like, rigidities of traditional military. Okay, and then we'll look at tents, and I think I actually need to go back to my tents. Assets, because I don't think I have the tent that I want for them up here. I think I do. I think I have the tent I want. I just don't think I have it in the color that I want. I actually kind of like this as like a multi-person tent that's up here. But I don't know that I like that color. Igloos. Oh, wait. Okay. Temporary shelter. Okay. Here we go. Because I put them in here as tents. They put them in here as temporary shelter. It took me a moment to find. And then, yeah, we're going to do... Yeah, no, we're going to do this dark brown for that one. And then that means I need the open tint, right? Okay, so that's bigger than I want, for sure. Let's... if we cut this guy down by 20%, then that would be 800 by 900. Okay. Still a little too large. Excuse me. My goodness. I'm just unfortunately full of sounds today. Okay, so we were originally at 1,000, so if we cut that down by 30%, then that would be 700 by 800. Wouldn't be exactly that, but ish. Maybe we're dropping it all the way to half. So it was, what's 500 by 600. This would be half. Where does that sit? Yeah, that's like about the size of an ogre tent. That would make sense for a, like, I'm imagining a few. Okay, and then height, we want to set this guy to 91 so that it's going to show up where we want it. Yeah, I think I like that positioning there, because that would still give some clearance for them to move, and then this could be kind of their little sort of communal area, right? So we'll probably set up a little one of the braziers and that sort of things up there for them. Because even though they are evil air, well, not air quotes, they're pretty terrible and brutal. The Hoxalva specifically, like are kind of some of the worst of the worst. Within the Iron Compact, they are not. Dark elves. They're not drow, right? So they're not subterranean. All of that. That'll eventually be the top to our tent. We can leave that over there. Now we can go about setting up the inside of this guy. So let's go to our beds and have this. And then memory serves, we did 75 by 150 for these bad boys. Yep. I'll do 91. Right. And then I'm also going to, yeah. So comparatively, we're talking about a blanket stretched out over a pile of hay versus like a normal bed that actually looks pretty good. Or in this case, these are just kind of meant to represent their bed rolls, if you will. So I'm imagining in total this is a unit of about 6. Unit is probably the incorrect military designation for a group of 6 soldiers. I will not say that I am hyper well versed on like what those things are, though. If you know what terminology, squad maybe is actually probably what I should be using for a team of 6. I don't know why I decided to bring a whole nother one of these out and edit it also when I could have just copied pastaed the other ones. But, hey, here we are. Yeah, and I specifically want to kind of reinforce the like outside of normal lines of organization feeling with these, so they're, you know, their beds are sort of scattered about. And memory serves, we did 75 by 75 with these guys. We sure did. Right, 91. Right. There. Nope, nope, nope. Yep. There we go. Oh, and actually, I had this all queued up and set up. I guess I will go ahead and get this rolling. Just so there's a little something more to cut some of the silence as I'm finagling with these different tile pieces and things here. Alright, so I am going to need to go grab some more bedding stuff. So, go to beds, single beds, the blankets, and yeah, we'll just go ahead and we'll add the other ones in that we don't already have. In the pool for the black blankets, we're just going to give all of these ones black. I don't know what I thought I was doing there. Not resizing properly. That's what I thought I was doing, apparently. Right. Oh. Okay. Kind of had to do that, unfortunately, since it slipped up underneath there and I had not reset the tile height first. This is the only downside of overlaying a bunch of tiles to do this, is it can get pretty cramped with different tiles overlapping each other, and it can be pretty difficult. This is why I did this in such like distinct layers. Like I got everything for the top of this tower done, I got all of its heights set, and now I'm coming in and I'm just adding pieces over the top of it, because if I had left any room for having to go back and edit these pieces once I have all of these other tiles overlapping them, some of these tiles it'll become nearly impossible to even interact with without having to move huge swaths of other tiles out of the way. And you can't really even just like click drag grab, because it at Foundry just considers a tile pretty much no matter what. The only differentiation you really get is, are you in the foreground layer or are you in the foreground layer or are you in the background, right? And beyond that, it'll grab every single tile in the foreground if I were to use the selector to just like click drag, because like you can see there, we've got all the pieces of the walls, we've got all of the like, you know, invisible tiles that are helping to create the air quotes ceiling, right? So that vision is blocked between floors, things of that nature. So while utilizing tiles can be very useful to add additional life or details or flesh out a scene, they can also be pretty tough. So I would just say, like, make sure that you're diligent about like one layer at a time, right? You know, I'm building a thing on top of a thing, right? So make sure that the platform that this campsite, right, is built upon is all correctly set up and in the right places, so that way I don't ever have to worry about going back and making any changes to that, right? You'll find a lot less headaches in your process if you approach it from that fashion. Or at least has been my experience. You know, I'm not going to tell anybody how they should or shouldn't do things, but I've made a lot of mistakes when it comes to Foundry and had some pretty frustrating situations where, like, I've had to blow up such massive portions of scenes to fix some, you know, some little nitpicky thing that my brain just wouldn't let go of, right? And so that's why measure twice, cut once, as the old adage goes. Okay. And we'll come back to, I think this is where we had our chest. Yeah, for sure, for sure, for sure. And then I kind of want, I want some distinction to these chests. So I guess let's look at what we've got here. Is under decor. Maybe it wasn't under decor. Could have sworn that it was. Now having to remember where I got these chests from. The default organization of this asset pack that I've gotten all of these from, which is something adventures. Let me look that up now. Forgotten Adventures. So that's the Forgotten Adventures assets pack is where everything that I've got now comes from. And they have a number of assets packs that I don't have. But they also have a Patreon that you can sub that constantly comes out with new assets. This was just like a major, huge, like, here's 1 billion assets, right? Thing that I downloaded from them quite some time ago. But looking at the additional assets they have now, maybe I need to look back into picking up some more stuff from them. But in any case, Forgotten Adventures is the assets pack. So this is specifically the Forgotten Adventures map making pack is where all of these assets come from that I'm utilizing to customize this scene. So because this is stream right now, I guess I can do this, right? All of the boom. So yeah, I'll just throw that in there, and then there a way for me to I should be able to, yeah, bam, we'll just pin that. There you go. Customize time. Unpin after. Manually unpinned or end of stream. Yeah, there you go. We'll leave that up. And then I'll also go ahead and throw Seafoot Games' link in here because they are the one who I get all of the maps for my D&D campaigns. Neither Forgotten Adventures nor Seafoot Games is a sponsor in any way, shape, or form, though if they wanted to, certainly wouldn't say no. They wanted to sponsor the stream, but I really love the work that Seafoot Games does. Yeah, we'll go ahead and pin that guy too, and yes, manually at end of stream, bam. Oh, can I only have one pinned message at a time? Is that how? I guess so. Okay, well, they're in the chat. People can look back at them in the chat, and I will put the links to both in the VOD description here on Twitch once this the VOD of this stream is published, and when I upload to YouTube, I will make sure that those links are in the comments as well. But yeah, not a sponsor, but in case people are looking for resources, I know sometimes there are so many resources out there when it comes to assets for map making and all of that sort of stuff. And people may already have their favorites and have no interest in changing, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that at all. And and people may already have their favorite map designers, right? But I just really love what Seafoot Games does, and for $5 a month, you literally get hundreds of maps every single month. It's insane. The amount that you get for as little as it costs over on their like Patreon. And I really like Luke. He's the guy who does all their maps. He's a cool guy. He's a super cool guy. Some nice folks from Australia over there at Seafoot Games. Okay, now we're back to where did I put? Okay. Or not, where did I put? Where are... here we go. Storage. And then sometimes it just feels like the folders for these are just like not where they're supposed to be. And then suddenly are. That is 100% probably just me though. And not actually a thing that's happening. Okay. This. There we go. We'll just add a few of these guys. And these are going to be like their trunks slash footlockers. And I imagine them being of actually much more varied make. Because societally, I will say that like the Hoxalva are much more just kind of, even within the society, like professional soldiers. They're not conscripted military like the rest. Like Hoxalva are pretty much lifetime members from, birth of the Iron Compact's military force. Not actually from birth, but from the time that they're adults on, like, within their society, the Hoxalva do literally nothing else. They serve many different facets and act in many different roles within the Iron Compact's military, but they are raised as professional soldiers. And so, as such, I imagine that they have a lot of their own equipment, things like that, that are handed down from one to the next and stuff like that. And much more than, like, they're not being issued this footlocker. Like, they showed up day one with theirs, so to speak. So yeah, to try and reinforce that, I want to give a little bit more of a varied appearance to these. Okay, and then there would be two more for the Beastmasters, and I imagine that theirs would be a little more heavy duty because they have to carry a lot of equipment for, well, dealing with the taming and upkeep of the different beasts that they bring to heal for their purposes, so to speak. I also chose this sort of richer wood grain because the Haxalva are raised to be professional soldiers. I imagine that there's a certain amount, like, while they don't have the same, like, regimented structure within the way that they operate because of how they operate within the Iron Compact's military, like, I imagine that they all take a lot more, like, pride in all of their equipment and things like that because the majority of it is theirs, right? This isn't some standard issue thing that they're toting around. Like, this is actually their footlocker. Like, this is actually their weapons, actually their armor, and so therefore they put a lot more time and care and effort into maintaining those things. So that's why I specifically went for this nicer sort of like mahogany look, as opposed to, like, you know, the footlockers that we had over here are kind of this drab, dry, dull sort of looking wood, right? Speaking of which, I can go ahead and retoggle the visibility on that. Right. And then we're gonna have some kind of rug in here. What do I already have? Oh, well, I do actually like these. I don't want it to be that big. Let's try you half. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, well, I suppose it would be helpful if I set you at the right height, huh? There we go. No, oh, right, because now I need back on the foreground layer. Let me remember all the rules. All of the rules. Okay. And then I even imagine they would have, let me see if I can find, there's tables. Okay. Let me see if I can find like a round wooden table. I imagine them having like a low table and this, like, you know, carpet, that they can all like kind of sit around, inside of here. Furniture. Tables. Round tables. Okay. Did not put you in the foreground layer. Weird. All right. 91. Also, I guess I should go. I didn't actually add that to my asset library, so I should go ahead and do that so that I have it for later in case I need it. There we go. And I'm actually, I imagine, so first let's resize this guy. Oh, right, let's go back to our foreground layer. Now let's resize this guy. 75, 75. I feel like this is going to be too small, or smaller than I want it for being like a communal table. Yeah, I want something a little bigger than that. So let's try 100, 100. I feel like it's probably still going to be too small. I think 125 is going to be the sweet spot I'm kind of looking for. Yeah. Okay, and then I'm going to actually add some tint to this. So let's... Okay, that's a little darker than I want. But yeah, I want to give this a little more dark. I want it to have the appearance of like a dark black kind of stained or like almost ebony wood kind of deal. And so, you know, if you think about like these people being professional soldiers, you know, raised as soldiers, there is no time away from duty for them, right? To a certain extent, like they will live their entire lives, always deployed or under orders and that sort of thing. So I imagine that they would have sort of culturally developed in this way where it's like, you know, we think about people. Okay. Sorry, somebody sent me a message over on my Discord. But yeah, so I imagine that, you know, unlike because that is kind of the downside of where they're at, right? They have increased freedom and station, but they're also always like under orders and that sort of thing. And they don't get the same amounts of time for things like family and, you know, day-to-day life pleasantries and things like that. Not that the Iron Compact isn't sort of a dystopian place that doesn't have a lot of that to begin with, but you have these people that are essentially given all of these sort of internal freedoms within the military, but also never have any time away from it. I imagine that they would have traditions of finding ways to have their like sort of spoils with them on deployment and things of that nature. And so that's why I've kind of given them some like even nicer maybe than the general's quarters looks, because this tent, right, is the closest thing to any kind of home that these Huxalva have. And, you know, perhaps, and this isn't a facet that I've 100% decided, but as I'm sitting here and thinking through this, I kind of feel like that they, like, once they're assigned to their unit, their squad, their whatever the case may be, like, that's it. That's kind of like that's their people. Like, they might, and almost like the Githyanki in a certain way, where it's like, you know, breeding is a thing that is done to extend the lines and produce the next generation, more so than it's like, you know, they take, you know, spouses and have families and things of that nature. I imagine their upbringing being, you know, much more sort of, you know, if you will, Githyanki like in that way. Not that I'm specifically trying to make them the Githyanki by any means, but it does kind of give you that same feeling, or at least the way that the Githyanki are painted in something like Baldur's Gate 3. There's lots of variation to that, but to where they're sort of raised communally as a military peoples. They're born into this life, no matter what, but they are also allowed a certain like manner of decadence, but it also comes always within the line of duty. It's not something that they're ever able to just have time away for. So, they would, I would imagine, have traditions amongst their people where there's like, you know, these small moments of appreciation and taking the time and putting the extra effort into having something like this rug and this, you know, table that's brought with them to different deployments and things like that, that seems so out of place to most people in the military, because this is a thing that they're serving. They're here to serve their term, or they're, you know, for however long this engagement lasts, and then they're on to the next thing, where, or they're off back home. Whereas, you know, a Haxalva is, this is just one of an endless number of deployments that they will experience over the course of their lifetime. All right. And then go ahead and clutter. And let's see here. Let's on along those lines, that also means that they would probably have some other additional decor, things of that nature in their space. So let's look at what we've got to play around with here. All right, so I want clutter. Mm-hmm. Okay. So as I'm kind of like looking through some of these pieces that I can put in here, actually, let's go for one that's a little more, yeah, a little more ostentatious. Yeah, I want that one. Just kind of dropping some things in there to give me some things to play around with and choose from. Spell components. No. Treasure. Okay, here we go. Yeah, here we go. I was looking for this. You guys can't see, so I suppose I should clarify what this is. So I was looking for this little statuettes folder that has some little statuettes in it. One of which I'm going to grab. Actually, a couple of which I'm going to grab. Okay. Awesome. So we can use some of these things to kind of decorate with, if you will. So first, at the center of the table, they are going to have a hearth light, which is an Eldrium item that's kind of like, and this is actually a thing that, based on previous campaigns, exists. It's kind of like an Eldrium lamp, but it's short-lived, right? Essentially, the hearth lights, the stones, the Eldrium stones in them have to be replaced fairly often, but they do actually produce like warmth and things like that as well, and essentially create like a sort of ideal condition bubble. Not all the way to the extent of something like Liamin's tiny hut, right? But kind of getting along those lines. And this is actually something that already exists, so I imagine they would have one. Again, you know, I imagine that because they're part of the same, like, unit, squad, you know, from the time that they're, that they come of age and are inducted into the military, that there's some of these things that are almost like communally owned, right? By the squad, and I imagine that they have a lot less probably sense of self then hence why you notice that like this whole area feels very communal. And I kind of intentionally went for that, because I don't think that, I don't think having all of the little, like, oh, here's my diary, here's my that sort of stuff, like that just doesn't really make sense for them to me, because of the way that they would be raised and live their lives. Like, and I should come up with the name for what their units are called, because if they're spending their entire life with this thing, and some of this is, stuff that I've thought about but never really like fully fleshed out the details of. And so it's just like, kind of talking through it as I sit here and put this together. Yeah, cool. So that'll be their little hearth light there. We'll do the lighting effects for that here in a minute. And then all of the Iron Compact, or I guess I should say the state religion of the Iron Compact, is what's known as the Eight, which are several different animistic deities that correspond to sort of different aspects of life and things like that. But each one has an animal that it's represented by. Do I make it part of this? Nah. I think that this is just like here. And I think they have one on the other side too. So the 8 animals of the 8 are 4 of them represent day and 4 of them represent night. And all of them, each of them is responsible in at least the Iron Compact's beliefs for an aspect of their, society's upbringing, and like in their mind, this is where their creation mythology comes from, essentially, right? So the 4 deities of night are the wolf, the raven, the spider, and the dragon. And then the 4 deities of day are the boar, the bear, the stag, and the lion. And the Haxalva tend to lean towards the deities of night, particularly the dragon, the spider, and the raven. And so I don't have a little raven statue. I wish that I did. I would put that in here, but we're going to put one of the spider statues. The spider deity is named Spindal. The dragon is Dvog. There we go. So that's right there. And then also on this table, I imagine they are playing cards. So we will... Hey, doing the wave, the octawave. What's going on, American woman? How are you today? For sure, the octawave. I am doing pretty well. Just continuing to work on our scene here in Foundry. I saw you were streaming for a little while yesterday. How'd it go? Good, hopefully. I'm hoping. Right. And then clearly, if they've got that there, went well, pretty short, but that's okay. Oh, okay. Playing some more Baldur's Gate, like your solo playthrough, or I haven't had a chance to go and look at the VOD yet. And then we'll have some coins out on the table, because clearly if they're gambling and playing cards, then there's money involved, right? Though I suppose it would help if we resize it. They're not going to have coins the size of saucers. No, Forza Horizon 5. Choosing the worst cars. Oh no. What's the worst car in Forza Horizon 5? I have no idea, but it's just fun to pick the limousine or van or something. Oh my god, racing in a limousine. Oh. Now I just have visions in my head of you like running a drift course in a limousine and it has Mountain Dew livery. Oh my god, a Mountain Dew limousine. Just a Mountain Dew limousine drifting down the side of a mountain. This is what I'm now imagining in my head. This is ridiculous and wonderful, and I love everything about that, and that does sound fun. Okay. And then, yeah, I think that is, I think that is our tent. All good to go. So we'll come back and we'll handle like the walls and things for that here in a bit. Well, no, I guess that's really the only thing that I have left to do up here. Right, so Oh, I do need to set a top height on this tent. And this is going to be clearly a much nicer tent than the tent that the ranger unit below had. So, pretty accurate. That's awesome. That's awesome. That sounds like, honestly, that sounds like a blast. I am terrible at racing games. I can't even remember the last time I played a racing game, if I'm being perfectly honest. So we're going to make this one 10 feet in height. So I'm going to give it a 100-foot top end elevation. 100 foot because technically the floor here is 90, right? So we want to make sure that that is 100 feet because of that. And then we're going to put some braziers up here for them for some light sources. So I imagine they would have one kind of back by their sort of camp-ish area. And then they would have one set up out. Actually, well, they have the hearth light inside the tent, so they probably wouldn't have set that up, but they would have these ones out here. I'm not very good either, but it's fun, and Horizon is forgiven. Okay. I think the last one, God, I can't even remember what it was, but there was some Need for Speed game that was like, I guess, trying to capitalize on, I think, the popularity of like the Driver series that was out at the, like, or had been out not that long ago, and like Grand Theft Auto. And so there was like one of the Need for Speed series where you were like driving, or like all of the races were you driving around in like stolen cars or something like that. God, I don't remember. It was like illegal street racing or something. It's been so long. You literally get skill points for crashing into stuff. Oh, that's hilarious. That sounds like, what is that game? Wipeout? I think, where it's like literally the whole point of the game is to cause the biggest possible car wrecks you can. All right, so for our walls here, just like we did with the tent below, I'm going to do terrain walls, which will allow the tent to be seen like the whole from any angle, but will block line of sight past it, which is what we're going for here. Oh, and that's going to disappear on me. This is going to be fun. Okay, well, actually, here's what I'm going to do. There's a way around this, because it's going to be really difficult to draw those walls. Hey, dang, what was it called? I had it. I thought it was called Wipeout. Was it not called Wipeout? Maybe it wasn't called Wipeout. Maybe that's just something that I've made up in my head. Okay, so that's going to sink that into the background layer. Which is okay. We want that here. We like this. Okay, good. And so now we have this, which is going to be the same size. So now, sometimes, you just got to think outside the box. So now I'm going to draw my walls for this tent. And then we will just take this entire wall that we've made, set it to the appropriate heights, and then we will take it and drag it over onto the other tent that wants to try to disappear as we draw these walls, so that way we can get around that. To be fair, the fact that it's disappearing is functioning properly. In case anybody's not aware, Foundry will automatically, when you mouse over it, try to occlude any foreground tiles. So that's not like something that it's doing that it's not supposed to. It does make, sometimes when you're utilizing that foreground layer and you're trying to put walls in it, right, can make it difficult if you're trying to base those walls around something that, like a tile that you've added to it, and not just something that is a static feature of the map that can't be occluded. Okay, bam. So first off, we'll mass edit. So we do want both a bottom and a top, because this doesn't start until 90 feet in height and it ends at 100 feet in height. Because we don't want this to block any line of sight below it, right? We don't want these walls to be pushed down into, oh, Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. Yes, the Need for Speed game. Yeah. Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. That was the last one I played, which was, oh, that was like 2008 or something. Like 2009 maybe. Long time ago. All right, and so we've still got this whole guy selected here. So now we're just gonna take this entire thing and we're just gonna set it right on top of our tent here. And now we can come back to this other tent tile and it can just go away. And now we'll give it the good old test. So we're on our token. Ah ha ha. See, now a new fun thing. So we need to set the occlusion parameters on these tiles that are up here, right? So this is why we test things. And to be fair, we are actually also fully okay if the edges of this wall are occluded in the same way. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to finish putting the like braziers up here that I'm going to have up here. And then we will come in and I will just do the occlusion settings for literally everything in this foreground layer up here, right? So let's go ahead and go back to our handy dandy tile browser. And if memory serves, yep, I sure do. Ooh-hoo. Okay. Can I grab? Nope, I sure can't. That was foolish of me because I needed to drag and drop it elsewhere, and I needed to. Okay. Let me think for a second. Okay, I can move this away for a moment. I can move that away for a moment. I just need to get to the brazier that I dropped in here by accident, which is going to be under that, I believe. Yep, that's it. Okay, so now we can put that back. All right. Now we can put our wall back in place. Okay. And now I can set this to the appropriate height that I want. So yeah, This is why you definitely want to be careful when you're utilizing this many tiles. Because, yep, little things like that will do exactly what just happened there. I got careless and I was ready to... I knew where I wanted to drag and drop it. I didn't need to make any edits to the tile beforehand, right? And so I just tried to put it exactly where it was, not remembering that it is not going to set my height parameter for me the way that I need it to for it to show up properly. So, but we have corrected our error. And all is right in the world once again. Well, all is not right in the world, but all is okay within this scene once again. How about that? Okay. All right, so we've got those. So now, now I'm gonna come in here, and now because I'm okay with everything being occluded the same way while someone is underneath it. Not only am I okay with that, but I actively want that, right? I'm literally just grabbing every single tile that I have up here in the foreground layer. And we're going to mass edit, right? And so this is the great part about Wiki Mass Edit. One of the modules that I am utilizing. If you haven't heard of it, definitely check it out. Because now I can come in here and I can edit a single parameter of all of these tiles without touching anything else. So, under position, no, levels. Okay, show even when below, no. Right, allow site if enabled, tile will not block site, right. Oh, wait a minute, does this not let me get to that setting? Overhead, okay, here we go. Occlusion mode. I want vision, token field of vision. And if I'm not mistaken, this is the one that's going to, if the token's field of vision allows them to, yep, okay, perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. So as long as the token's field of vision allows them to see underneath it, then the tile is occluded. So now, boom, we can see there. Yeah, bam. And then, yes, boom, I come up here. And, and nothing exists. Well, isn't that exciting? And new and different and fun. Okay, well, we clearly see these things. Okay, token vision. Oh, yes, I know what's happening. Okay. Thanks, I hate it. All right. I know how to fix this. So it's a little wonky. It's not perfect. This is a thing that I should have foreseen. But there is actually a pretty easy way to fix this. So we're going to take this and we're just going to change this to 9191 because the height of all of those things up there is 91 because I had to do that to get it to show up above the drawing, which essentially creates the floor for this whole upper area here, right? Which means now if we come back to here, and this token is at 90, but this token doesn't have height either. If the token had height, let's give it height, appearance. We're going to give it a 6-foot height. And I bet you, bam, nope. Okay, it doesn't see it there either. Well, Now, if we set this, so it is going to be based on exactly where the floor of the token is. But yeah, if we set it at 91, then everything up here becomes visible. So by making the teleport now 91 feet, boom, boom, that fixes our issue for us. It's a little janky. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it's not, but the other things that I would have to do to get around this small amount of jank, it's way more time than I'm willing to put. I would have to take so many things apart to put them all back together to get rid of this jank. So we're just going to let it be a little jank. And, you know, sometimes that's okay. It's not terrible. It's still going to automatically adjust the height for the character. The only thing it impacts is they're going to be able to see ever so slightly more over the like walls and crenellations at the top of this thing than they otherwise would have. And I just feel like that's a pretty much a non-issue, really. You know, so. So in that case, we'll now go about the other lighting that we have here. Now, thankfully for us, we've actually already created all of these lights prior. So we actually just need to come in here. And then we want... yeah, I need to do this. Part of it, too, is like the walls and that sort of thing. Now, this is another aspect of why someone might choose. I didn't do it with this, and I traditionally don't do it with this, but this does kind of demonstrate why someone might choose in a single map scene, right? And what I mean by single map scene is I'm only utilizing this one battle map for this scene to create essentially a 2D, 3D image. Well, there are multi-layer maps, right, where you actually have successive like maps basically stacked on top of each other, and you would use height ranges and things like that to adjust when somebody saw one versus the next, so on and so forth, as they moved through the layers. Well, those maps are typically the ones that I use the levels module for. And actually assign levels to each of those different maps, right? So that it automatically sits at a certain layer, and I know that when somebody's above this, they're going to see that, and so on and so forth. This is why someone might decide to use levels on a map like this also, because some of what I'm setting up with occlusion and all of that sort of stuff could, to a certain extent, be handled automatically by the levels module. The problem that I find with it is that oftentimes, here, well, let me finish setting the elevation on this and the top height on this, I suppose. Well, really just the elevation. That's all I need to set. So bam, we'll put that there. So the issue that I find with it, and actually before I do that, we'll just copy this one and paste that one so that I can go here with that. The issue that I end up finding with it is that the thing levels does is it also takes away a little bit of freedom. And what I mean by that is that the levels module oftentimes is going to create a situation where it doesn't want anything to exist outside of the parameters of a level. And what I mean by that is, let's say I have a wall that goes from 20 feet in height to 30 feet in height, right? But I have a level that starts at 25 feet, meaning that I have another level that ends at 25 feet. Well, that can actually create a lot of problems when you have walls and items that extend between and beyond levels, right? And even with like lighting, right? So if I were using levels and I wanted this lighting to show up in the other level, most of the time what I'm going to end up having to go and do is I'm going to have to put another light into place on that level because this light is going to be constrained by that level. Now, what that does allow you to do, right? Here's the benefits, the disbenefits, because there's always both on either side. And while I'm talking about that, I'm going to go ahead and copy this guy, and we'll get its height set appropriately. Now, by being forced to create another light, the benefit to that, oh no, I copied that. I want to copy this. Yeah, that. Nope, not the little guy. Fine, we'll just do this and set the height again. The benefit to that is that you can then set at a higher height a dimmer version of the light from the level below to kind of create the natural like dimming of the light as you get further away from it vertically. And so that piece of it and being able to do that is also cool. I just find that that is an unnecessary step for my own processes. And if you find that that's something that you feel like will benefit your scenes, then great. But I just find that for the most part, it's something that doesn't end up coming into play enough for it to really be worth trying to do. And now that we have this in place, we can clearly see we have a number of places, seams along this wall where things aren't quite properly lined up. So let us go about trying to go ahead and fix those. I feel like all I've done is just make that worse. That's fun. Okay. All right. Let's see if I can even trace back where this one comes from, because this could be coming from essentially almost anywhere along here. Looks like this is the spot it's actually coming from, though, so let's see. Nope, because it's definitely grabbing both of those. So the other spot it could be is this. Yep, it sure is. So let's check again. Cool, we've sealed that up. Got some bleed through here. Right. And here. Okay. Guy just does not want to seal up. What's the problem? There we go. And just a million points of bleed over here. Okay. Okay. All right. Think we've got those lights pretty well sealed up now. And then we can move this guy back here. Yeah, and last thing that we will do is we're gonna go back to our handy dandy region controls. And to this already monstrous list, we will add yet 2 more. We will add our teleport in and teleport out from this tent. Bottom height, I want at 91. Top height, this is a 10-foot high tent, so, and it ends at 100 feet, so we will just put 100. Salva. Tent entrance. And then for our behavior, we're going to do a teleport token, create, enter tent. Update region. And then we will go ahead and draw. Oh, no, we won't. No, we sure won't, because I have that selected. So it wasn't going to do a new one. It was going to do more of the same, which is not what we want. So now we will draw this guy. Right. And then I'll tent interior. Again, bottom at 91. Top at 100. And teleport token. Great. And this we will call exit tent. Update region behavior, update region behavior. So we'll get our entrance. And then we will get our our interior. We'll open our enter. And we'll open our exit. And we'll take you from there to here. Add. We will ask and update. And then I want the entrance once more so that we can do the same here. Ask and update. Right. Now let's grab our little token here. Yes, we want to go up the ladder. And yes, we want to enter the tent. And then once the tent is entered, it'll just come to the tile control here and toggle the visibility states. And now you'll be able to see the interior of the tent. Ah, and that's the other thing that we need to set up here. We want to make this a light source. Doesn't need to be very large, but we do want to make it one. So we'll go to lighting controls, lights, camera action. And let's just draw it over here so that we can set all of our parameters, and then we will just drop it into place. So radius of bright on this is 10 feet and dim is 20. And then light animation. We want not pulsing wave, right? Yeah, no, we want pulse. And then we're going to make this kind of a golden light. Cool. And then we're going to turn the color intensity up, but we're going to actually turn the luminosity down. Because we want it to feel a little softer. And we're going to turn the attenuation up. Actually, we'll probably just go ahead and max the attenuation. Yeah. There we go. Like the way that's looking. And bam. We'll add that in our tent there. Oh, and we didn't set any appropriate heights for this thing. So, of course, you're not able to see it up there. So we will give this elevation of 91 feet. Still a little bright, so let's see how we can soften this up some. Color intensity down. Okay, I think that's... Yeah. All right, there we go. And so we will, yes. In which case at that point we could come back and we can toggle the visibility state of the top layer of our tent. Which went where? Did we just delete it completely? I think we might have. Well, that's unfortunate. Not that that can't be fixed, but... Actually, I don't remember pressing delete, so now I'm wondering if I didn't accidentally sync this into a lower layer. Well, if I did, it's below the map completely, so that's okay. In that case, just come back here. Pretty easy, quick fix, honestly. And we'll come back to tents. Uh, 600, 500, I believe. Yep, because we're just cutting in half. Yeah. Which is an overhead tile. Yes, and then the height. Top height 100. And then position height 91. Now we can put our tent entrance back into place. If we put it at the right angle. And there you have it. So we will go ahead and drop this bad boy back into night. Yes, okay, awesome. I think I need to give this token vision. We're going to do a walkthrough here. Yeah, vision range 30 feet, basic vision. Oh, okay, cool. No, I do actually have on. Perfect. You can see into the jail cells. Let's see out the windows. Ah, that was it. Okay, so the one last detail, if I have the assets for it, we shall see. If I have the assets for it, then I'm gonna change up these cannons, because they wouldn't necessarily be cannons. This is me probably just taking things entirely too far, in which case then I need to put down some other crates here to kind of get rid of the cannon balls. But let's go ahead and we'll create... Wait, do we already have one that is... No, we don't. So we will create one that is artillery. And I think I have this asset, actually. Because I want to change those. No. Okay, maybe I don't. I thought I did, though, somewhere. I thought I had a, like, Gatling gun asset. But apparently I do not. I could have sworn I had used one before, and this is really the only asset pack that I've ever purchased and utilized for stuff like this. Alright, well. Cannons they shall be then. And in that case, we'll flip it back to here. Yeah, if Foundry is working on, which if I know Foundry, they're probably already working on version 14, that would probably be my only piece of feedback, is if there's a way to make the like movement within the regions and the change in elevation and the execution of a script within a region, if there's a way to make it a little more, a little less stuttery. Make it feel a little smoother, but that's like a nitpicky thing that I would love to see Foundry do, but if they don't ever do it, like, whatever, it's not that big a deal. Alright, and then we've got our camp area there. And as intended, we're able to walk under the bridge here. Alrighty. Well, there we have it. That is this scene at completion. So, I am going to pause for a brief moment. I need to run and grab something to drink and go use the restroom and all that jazz. So we are going to reconvene here in about 10 minutes. But I thank you guys for being here and hanging out, and then we will look into working on our next scene, which I have a few ideas for what our next scene is going to be. So I'll kind of look through the map assets that I've got and decide where I want to go with the next one, because I also want to make sure that the next map that I do, or the next scene that I do, is able to illustrate some different techniques than we utilize here, right? So, like I said, for now, I'm going to step away, but we will reconvene in 10, and I will leave you guys with the tunes while we do so. So. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Thank you again so much for your patience. So, next up, we're going to create a new scene. We're just going to call this scene 2 for right now. We can come back and rename it at any point. And then this is where we're going to come into map files, desert maps. And we will choose file. And let's just see what we've got. In the old map library. I wish it showed you this part so that way you could see, but let's look at settlements. Okay. This one will be good. So we will... Okay, I'm actually going to exit out of that. And then I'm going to create a new one here called Settlements. And then this is going to be a village in the region. I'll get into deciding all of the details about the village and things of that nature, probably, as we go through building the map, but I know that this is one of the ones that I want to utilize during the course of this campaign for a few different reasons, and I think you'll kind of see as I go to begin building this out, like why I would choose this, I think. But we're going to start with, so whenever you are doing, because this is going to be a multi-layered map, right? And whenever you are doing so, you always want to, start with whatever your lowest, like point is, or like, you know, for example, if I'm doing a multi-layer map that is a home with a basement, a first story, and a second story, I want to set the basement as my background image. So whatever the lowest map that you want layered into that equation, right? You want that on the bottom. So in this case, we're starting off with the basement. I will go ahead and leave it 300 DPI. For right now, Grid, we're going to go gridless, right? Lighting, I'm going to kick on global illumination. And then all of this ambiance and everything like that, we may or we may not decide to set after the fact. For the background, I always do black. You can do whatever color you want. It legitimately does not matter in the slightest. So, bam. Scene 2. Ah, okay. And that was a little bit what I was maybe afraid of. So this is the one downside. I'm going to try this really quick. This is going to, I think, jank up a bunch of stuff. If I do this, hold on just a moment. Okay. Yeah, that was a little bit what I was afraid of. So this is the only downside about 300 DPI maps in Foundry is that for whatever reason, sometimes they just will not render. Like, they just won't. So, let's see here. Go back to this. We'll configure. Okay. So in that case, we will can that. And give me just a moment here. I will grab us the appropriate one. I should be able to get this fairly easily. Here we go. So that is one of the great parts about being part of the Seafoot Games Patreon, is I can just go get the one that I need when I need it. Okay, so we will quickly grab both of these. Awesome. All right. And now we will try this one more time with feeling. So we're just going to put desert village because we know that this is a village now, right? Create scene, grid. We're going to leave gridless lighting. We're going to global illumination. And this time, we will go to the 150 DPI version. This should be able to render for us without issue. Yep, select that. And we'll make this black background once more. Save changes. Bam. Bam. This is the map that we were looking for. And this is the lower level of the map that we were looking for. So, this is going to let us have some fun with multiple layers for our map, right? So, just kind of taking a look around here. Entrance points, exit points, all of that sort of stuff. And then the first thing that we can come in here and do, and this is kind of my process whenever I start. So for this, I do know that we are going to utilize multiple, multiple levels. So the very first thing that I want to do is actually come in here to levels, right? Nope, I don't want to create a tile. I want to toggle off place regions as stairs. Enable light is enabled in scene settings. Okay. So from here, we're going to expand this out some. We're going to add a new level. We'll go to edit levels, right? And then based on what I am seeing here, I'm just going to go ahead and call this a 20-foot level, right? That sounds appropriate. For right now, we don't need to know more than that because essentially what we're going to do is very much like we did with the first map. I'm going to go through and I'm going to create that region layer, right? Need this guy, what? Need this guy for D&D chat. Oh, the little flaming dude? Yeah, for real. So American Woman and I are in a D&D game on Thursday nights. Hence that comment. But with this, I'm going to go in and I'm going to create that region layer level, right? Like I did before. That's going to set the different heights of all the different regions for us, right? That will automatically set the heights of our tokens as they move around the map and adjust their heights and everything like that. Just like we did on the last map. So for now, I can just leave this at 20 feet. And if I need it to be more than that, then I can come in and I can make it more than that. The main thing that I want to decide is before you actually start drawing any walls, that is the time where you want to decide your region, your level heights. Because when you go in and select a level, right, and then go to... then when you go to levels and then like you have this level selected, so this pop-up will now remain up at all times, even when I go to other tabs, and you want to leave this open because this is essentially your levels control module. Well, so now when I draw a wall, and I will just show you like a small example, we can just draw a wall right here. One of the things that we will see is wall height is automatically set to 20 because that is the height of the wall or of this level. So that's just one of those things that you always want to make sure before you start drawing any walls. When you are using levels, you want to make sure that you get your, like, know firmly what height you want your levels to be at and everything like that. For myself, kind of like my process with the last map, if you guys watched from the beginning, I let the map decide, essentially, is the way that I like to put it. And I let the ground layer be the ground layer, right? And everything else from there. And as it goes up, right, then once I know the maximum height, because, for example, I'm just putting 20 here as like an example, but I can already see there are these ground layers beneath these buildings that I'm going to want to have at 0 depth, right? Or actually, like, the lowest navigable point on the map is what I want to have a depth or height of 0, right? So these interior parts of this crevasse are actually what are going to be my 0 height items. And then once I get to the upper portions, and I know, okay, well, let's say by the time I get here, let's say the height's 15, and I know that I want this room to have at least a 10-foot clearance, and maybe it's 15 over here too, but I know I want this room to have at least a 20-foot clearance. Well, then I know that I need to actually set the top of my level's height at 30 feet, right? And then doing that before I draw any of my walls will make sure all my walls are already at the appropriate height. Now, some walls you're going to want lower than that, just inside the level. Like, for example, some of the walls that we'll use for these, like, huts and things like that, right, are clearly going to be lower than these, like, cave wall pieces here. But at least it gives us the correct starting point for our wall height for all the walls that we don't need to change. So it won't save you from changing the walls that you want at very specific heights, but it will save some other stuff. So there we go. Right. So without further ado, then we will get to drawing some regions. And that is also why in this situation I am avoiding starting off with, because normally I would also, if I knew this whole scene was going to be on the same level meaning the levels module, first thing I would do right off the bat is just go ahead and wall my scene. But I don't want to do this, right? Because if we come in here to Desert Village, configure, if I do this wall scene while I'm on this level, it's going to create a wall of this height range as well. So just things to think about and consider if you are going to utilize and use the levels module. But we don't need to continue editing at the moment, so we can just leave that at 20. And we can come and we can get started with, like I said, our regions. And I actually need to grab a hat because I am running into the sun in my eyes, preventing me from even being able to see the map because of the very dark portions. So I will be back in 3 more seconds again. Alright, hats acquired. I am going to need to move my desk at some point, but unfortunately, with both streaming today and working today, today is not the day for that. So let's get into some regioning, shall we? Now, if I'm not mistaken, I do actually think the levels module is going to do the same thing with regions that it does with walls. In that by the time this region is done, or I'm done drawing this segment of it, I should say, then I think it's going to set it at the same height parameters. But again, we can just very easily go in and make that change. And then the interior, like, crevasse part here, I actually want to be, like, I know that you can see some very dark, shadowy, sort of like bone-like things there. I want that to be the maximum depth. And by that, I mean, I actually want that to sort of be, like, so low that it's, like, beyond the bounds of the map that I want the players to actually travel. So that'll be, excuse me, having to clear my throat. My allergies have not been the best today. But yeah, so I actually want that to be a situation where it's like, if a player goes past this, like, lower edge here, which is why I'm using this as the 0 feet, I want that to turn into, like, they're falling, right? Or if somebody gets pushed in that, I want that to be like a pretty dramatic fall distance. Unfortunately, getting this to move while you're on the region drawing tool, not always the easiest. And this, because the map definitely shows like a bunch of bones down in this crevice and everything like that, that are pretty easily visible by, you know, people looking at the map. This is also an example of when I will more than likely go in, because just like you can create light sources, you can essentially turn light sources into shadow sources. And so we can show how that piece works, and we can use those at appropriate heights to darken up those areas so that it looks as though it's significantly deeper of a fall. Because I essentially want that to be like a I mean, not gonna lie, I essentially want that to almost be like a fall to your death sort of deal. And in some of those places, like you just saw me there drawing this line like through this house, you know, this is meant to represent the region that's going to be, or the height, like range that's going to be below where that house is. And so I'm just kind of based on where the like terrain line sort of starts and ends, right? I'm just kind of giving my best estimation of like sort of where I think it should go. Based on the, like I said, the starting point and the ending point of where that sort of space is. Okay, so for this one, this looks like this wraps around here. And same thing here. And I don't even necessarily need to do this underneath there. I could just do segments, right? But again, this is also, not only is this serving the purpose, so this portion always serves two purposes for me, which we kind of talked about before. The primary purpose, right, of creating something like this for myself, at least, is to be able to create that seamless vertical movement option for my players, right? But beyond that, it also gives me the point of reference of knowing what height certain things are at. Well, yeah. I followed the wrong line there for a minute. So sometimes you just got to back it out and go again. But yeah, so by having the intersecting regions, that's definitely, like I said, part of that also for me is going to help me know where those regions overlap so that I know when a more dramatic height shift, right, might occur from one spot to the next. And same thing, just went a little too far because this ridge extends back out to here. And then just travels along this path here. Yeah. All right. So this is where we will put 0 foot elevation. And then, yeah, so it did do what I thought it was going to do, which was set the auto top of this level to 20. And the truth is I don't actually want to do that. I really only want to put a 5-foot margin on here. And again, this goes back to if I have a player that, let's say they're playing an Owlin, let's say they're playing an Aarakocra, something like that, a fairy, some species with flying, and they're flying above this area, I don't want them to automatically get sucked down to the height of this region just by flying over it, right? I want them to be able to represent that sort of flight height, if you will, by being able to move over the different portions of the region and not have to worry about it like changing their elevation suddenly. So I really only want to set this top height at about 5 feet because I just want situations where I have a player who's on the ground, right, and not flying, going from here to here. I want their elevation to be shifted. If I specifically was designing this, so keep in mind I'm also partially designing this with no set party in mind. If I already knew my players, I already knew exactly what they were going to play, everything like that, then I might approach this differently because I might know factually at this point when they reach this map that there's not going to be any flying. Like they won't have a way to fly. And so therefore that doesn't matter. And then I could set it all the way to the top because if they get shoved into that area, it'll automatically cause them to also fall. You know, so some potentially beneficial things by having it at that higher height, but it's like you've kind of got to make the choice. And I feel like the being able to tell the player, oh, you fall, you set your height at this, is less annoying in the moment than having a player who has the ability to fly, having their height constantly changed, even though they're flying at a certain height as they move around the map. So. And then behaviors, we will execute script. All right, been a minute since we've done this one. And do set to 0 foot. Token enters, and then I'll come over here to my notepad. And where do I have that script? Here we go. And we will just copy and paste that in here. And we want elevation to set to 0 here. Boom. All right. So now we've got this region set, so we just move on to our next area of 0-foot elevation, which is going to be this opposite little chasm spot here. Oops. Yeah, and then this is always kind of the most zen part of scene designing for myself personally. Whoop. Misclick there. go. Yeah, so it looks like... Sorry about that. I've been having, like, sneezing fits all day, so I keep having to mute my mic temporarily. And actually, I'm realizing one of the very first things I should have done was drop my test token on the map so that I can make sure sizing-wise everything is already the way that I want it. So there is a chance that I may have to blow up these regions that I just did. Because I always forget that has to be the first step of the process. Otherwise, the rest of it, to a certain extent, kind of doesn't matter. So, let's hope I didn't screw myself over. Wouldn't be the first time in Foundry, but thankfully, that's all I've had to do so far. Just this crazy blue misty river. I wonder if there's actually some weird algorithm that decides because this blue, that same shade of blue, I'm pretty sure, was the 0 foot layer on the last map. I wonder if there is something that automatically decides, like, this is the next color, and this is the next color, and this is the next color. Anyway. Be interesting to know. If somebody does watch that knows, you should drop that in the comments. Or if you're here live at some point, you should throw that in chat. Okay. Let's see here. So yeah, I'm going to go to the token layer. And we're going to throw down this token. And size-wise, how am I feeling about that? I feel like size-wise, I'm actually pretty good with that. That looks pretty, yeah, because I want that to be like a 1 token space. So 150, and I thought I remembered 150 DPI being kind of like already appropriately sized, and you didn't really have to do anything much with the tokens after the fact. I am very intrigued as to why the 300 DPI maps sometimes just don't work. Because I definitely used to use the 300 DPI maps like pretty much exclusively and never had an issue with them until version 12. Version 12 was the first one where 300 DPI maps, a lot of them, if it was a certain size, right? Like if it was a big enough map, the 300 DPI maps just wouldn't render, just straight up, like said no, basically. I never really understood. Alright, so just double checking to make sure I don't have any weirdness anywhere else, but I think that is our first layer done. And I do think that I want to create some pretty, like, and even with some of these walkways, I think that I want some pretty intense, like, height and elevation shifts. Yeah, I think that this map is, I don't know whether there will ever be combat here, but I just think visually exploring this map is, if it were me as the player, I think it's going to be really cool by the time we're all done. So, let's move on to our next level. And this one, we're going to go straight to 5-foot elevation. And that's why when I said I wanted some pretty dramatic shifts. So I'm not going to do the 2.5 elevation steps like I did before. There might be a few little 2.5 elevation shift layers like scattered about in a few little spots. But for the most part, okay. Yeah, so I'm going to do 5-foot buffer on either side, just like we did on the last map. So bottom will still be 0, but the top will be 10. And then we can go ahead and start making shapes. Okay, that's the next spot that I have to connect it to, so. Sorry about this. I'm just trying to make sure there isn't another weird layer somewhere that I don't already know about. There is not. Man, how many times can I click that today? Many is how many? Okay, that actually is another tier back there. Should have ensured I had more caffeine for this morning. I am starting to be lulled to sleep by my own vibes here. Amen. There we go. All right, so there is that side. And it looks like we will probably have time. Oh, wait, no, there's some more of this layer down here that just doesn't connect. Right? Yes. Right. Okay, so now I just have to find where it starts. We're going to say under here. Let's see how many times I can hit that today. There we go. And apologies for some of this. My hands are very shaky at times. I'm not really 100% sure due to what, and I went the complete wrong way with this. There we go. But today is one of those days where it's worse than others, so my hand is not quite as steady when drawing these regions as at other times. So if it seems jittery, you're not wrong. Oh, hey, what's up, Golden Fire? What's going on, man? What? Hey, Red. What's up? I knew you guys were playing today. I thought you guys were going longer. I was expecting to be raiding you guys. How was the session? How is Bibble? I'm doing well. How are you doing, Golden? It's been a minute. Sometimes go longer, sometimes not. Bibble cause more nightmares. That's awesome. That is awesome. DM was tired as us. Some DM decided we quit. Aren't you the DM? I'm okay, just tired. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's why I thought you were said DM. But yeah, no worries, man. I think it's just today. Because honestly, like, my allergies have been bugging me all day, and I'm feeling like kind of sleepy. Or I'm also getting towards the end of my stream time as well. But hope I do well enough as DM. I mean, from what I watched, dude, your game looks awesome. So I think on my end it's just work. Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, there's that too. So it's like my day job. I'm air quoting because my day job is actually at night. Like, I've been getting off like 3 or 4 in the morning. Let's go. I am approval. Please, I am not the arbiter of who is or is not a good DM. No, don't do that. Don't do that. There is no DM style that's wrong. There are DM styles that are wrong for certain player groups, but there is no DM style that's wrong. Too late. I'm taking it. Ooh, yeah. All right. Fine. The crown is yours, good sir. Officially bestowed upon you by the House of Get Your Roll On. No, I don't know. But that's awesome. I'm glad you guys had a good session. Oh, yeah. For sure. So that's basically that's have a coffee. Yeah, no, for sure. No, I will definitely there will be some coffee in my not too distant future. So yeah, I mean, I'm building out a whole campaign that's going to be to playtest. It's called FPS 5e for now. That's just a working title, but essentially more robust and sort of giving a little bit of the visceral feel of like an FPS game to the way that firearm mechanics and that sort of stuff work in D&D. So that's a supplement that I'm going to be releasing later this year. So I'm going to be doing a campaign to playtest it and also somewhat debut it, right? Because Foundry sucks sometimes. Yeah, no, Foundry does suck sometimes. I mean, it's the best tool we have, but it also, at times, it's like Foundry is definitely its own language. And if you try to talk to it in a language that isn't its, it will make you want to beat your head against the wall for sure. But yeah, so long story short, I've been on, what is it? I guess it's, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. I've been streaming my actual like campaign setup and all of the scene building in Foundry. So we just finished the last scene, well, which I guess since you guys are here, actually, yeah, let me just back out this shape completely because I can redraw this little portion that I've drawn here. I'll actually go back and I'll take you guys on a little tour of the finished scene. I have found ways to add images to my notes for when the DM reads them as surprises. Got distracted adding many things to them today. Yes, you can definitely add images to your notes in Foundry. So yeah, this was the last scene that we worked on. I'll kick the lights back on so you can kind of see all of it, and then I'll set it back to night and do like a little walkthrough. But so this was the last scene that we did. For context, let me actually... I'm just going to call this before, and then we'll throw this down as the background image. No, not that one. Up. Structures. Fortress. No, which one of these is it? Is it Desert Highway? Well, I suppose I can just look at the scene that I'm already on, and that'll tell me. Hold on. Let me see here. Fortress. Oh, it is Fortress of... Okay. Gotcha. So yeah, we'll do this and configure, and I'll just throw this on there so you can see what I'm talking about here. right? So here's what we started with. This was like the base map that we started out with, right? And then this is the finished scene. Minus, I haven't actually put in all of the enemies and everything like that that'll be in there. When Bibble actually has notes, I will send you the wonderful pictures. Yes. Yeah, you will definitely have to send me the pictures from Bibble's notes. But yeah, so that was the before. This is the after. So we added some details to the scene, added a second level up here and all of that sort of stuff. And then I will take you on a little scene walkthrough. So we also created a region map for this scene that will automatically adjust heights, like token height, as you travel. So you'll notice here as our token moves around, its height is automatically shifting. And then, of course, we have like the teleport sections that'll move you between pieces of the map, right? Gotta head to lurk. Time for snacks. Yes, yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm actually about to raid somebody else because I'm going to have to get ready for work here shortly. I just figured I would show Gold in the scene since he hadn't had a chance to see any of the previous stuff. So just kind of a quick tour. And then, of course, we used the windows to set the like gradiated point of view as you get closer or further from. We set the bars to where you have to get within a certain distance to see inside, and use some overlapping light effects to try to give the flame a little more detail here and that sort of deal. But yeah, this was our first scene, so this will be the first scene of that playtest campaign when that time comes. It's funny. This is actually like I think I've only been rated like one other time. I completely forgot what the sound effect was and heard it and had no idea what was going on when you guys came in. So, but yeah. So this is our little fortress. So fortress was originally built by dragons, is now resided in by an army of evil giants, and will be the first encounter / scene of the first campaign. And then, of course, we added this whole little like camp area down here because the structure is just not big enough for some giants, so clearly Giant General needed his own tent, and then some of the other like local forces from the area, that sort of deal, that are stationed here. But yep, so that's what we built last time. And so this is what like the region layer looks like, right? So this is what we're using to actually create that automated height shift between all the different heights. And so that's on our new scene, the new one that I'm working on now, which will be something that comes up later in the campaign. This desert village. Then we're just going through and doing that same thing now. So this like central portion is going to be like kind of an out of bounds. I'm actually going to use some darkening or dark source effects to make this look more chasmy. So this will be kind of a fall to your doom sort of deal. And then each of these will be the different layers as they tier up and get into the village. And then this is also going to be a fully multi-layered map. So this will be several more sessions to fully build out than the last one was. Because essentially what'll happen is we're using the levels module, right? Yeah, we're using the levels module here to actually create So there will be another level with a whole nother map on top of it that acts as a, like, once you go above a certain point on this map through different, like, stairways, it'll actually automatically transition you to that map level. And then we should be able to set this up also to where you're able to, like, see tokens through certain portions of the map that are exposed to one another from one level to the next and all of that sort of stuff. So I thought that would be cool because we didn't really do any of that on this first one. And I knew that this was a map that I wanted to use at some point during the campaign. Or that this was going to be a village in the, like, region that the campaign is going to take place in. Because it takes place in a small region of one of my campaign worlds that I've run games in for a long time. And so, yeah, that's basically what we're up to now. But it is, unfortunately, the time where I now have to do my cutoff. And I am going to have to go and get ready for work. So I very much appreciate everybody who took the time to watch today. Thank you so much, Red and Golden, for your raids. You guys are rock stars. You will get shout outs in the VOD comments, and I will also make sure that there are links to your respective channels in the VOD when I upload to YouTube later this evening. But I just hope that everybody has had an awesome day, no matter what time these words may find you, whether you're listening to them live now or whether you hear them after the fact. I hope that you have had a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and that it continues to be so for you. We are going to find somebody else now to raid, and then we will send it off from there. So let's see who's available here. Let's see here. All right, here you go. This looks like a cool map, a cool setup. So we will go ahead and raid over to here. They're on episode 1 of Tomb of Annihilation too. So we can see how their campaign begins.